Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Reverend Everton Robinson. He's a minister, a businessman, an author. Recently has written a book, A Child's Guide to Wisdom. We'll talk about that. And we'll also learn about how parents can lay a foundation of lifelong wisdom from a very early age for their children. We'll discover about powerful parenting insights that can change how your child grows, thinks, and thrives in today's complex world. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Tony. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can raise wise kids, not just smart ones in this today's time we'll talk about. But before that, Tony, let's learn a bit about your background, your journey, so that people know who they are listening to.
Well, I am originally from Panama. I grew up in Panama. I'm one of 8 children, and my parents were very religious, and they brought us up in church, and so we had a very strict upbringing. As I got older, I got away from all that, and I just went on my own, just started doing whatever I wanted to do, and then later on realized that all the things that my parents were trying to teach us were right. And so I decided to really embrace wisdom as a way of life. And so I started doing that. At the age of 32, I went to a seminar, and someone was talking about her upbringing and the fact that her parents, her father was an officer in the military, and he always he taught them principles of success, and then he tested them. You know, every now and then he would test them and ask them, see what qualities they had embraced and which ones they lacked, and so on. He assessed them. When I listened to that, I said, "Wow, if that happened to me, I would have way different decisions." So I decided when I had my children that I would teach them principles of wisdom from the time they could speak, so that they would be able to grow up with these principles and be able to have wisdom. Not just learning it by trial and error like most of us do.
Absolutely wonderful. We'll come to the book in a bit. First, a few things to understand. Some people will be opinion that there is too much of pressure on children about career, about from an early start itself. Now you're talking about additionally something called wisdom. Why shouldn't we leave the kids alone? Reduce much more information to that. What would you like to say to that, Reverend Everton?
Well, the problem is most of the wisdom that we learn by trial and error. We either do something and then our parents say, no, don't do that. And so we learn that way, or sometimes we make big mistakes and then we learn from those things and we don't do them anymore. But what if they had words that encapsulated the behavior? I thought if they knew what the principles were, then they could live a principled life. I could teach them how to apply the principle as they grew. So that's what I say to that. You can either do trial and error, or you can have a word that you can relate the behavior to.
Absolutely. And how do you then, where do you teach those children, at home or in school? Who has the bigger responsibility here? Where will they learn better?
The parent. See, here's the thing. Children demand time and children demand presence. I had twin girls, and every day they wanted my attention. And if I was with them and I got on the phone, they would behave terribly, interrupting and everything, because they're saying, you can't just be here, you have to be here. And so because they demanded my attention, I said, okay, I'm a captive audience. I have to give them attention. So in the process, I'm not just going to teach them Mary had a little lamb. And, nursery rhymes, I'm going to teach them something that they can use. And so during this captive time, I inserted the principles. It didn't take up all the time, but it took up some of the time so that they could learn.
Absolutely. So how did you teach them? How is it that you inculcated wisdom into them without even without them also knowing it, but just learning it with the due process of time?
Okay, so every day they would say, "Dad, read us a story." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I started reading them stories. But during the time my children were growing up, The Lion King was the big movie, and they would watch The Lion King every day. And one day they were watching the movie and they said verbatim every word in the movie. And I said, if you can do that, you can learn principles. And so when in their story time, I would say, okay, repeat after me. Wisdom is knowing what to do, and then repeat it, and doing it when you're supposed to do it, and knowing what not to do, and not doing it. So I preface the story by teaching them the principle. And so we do that every day. So by the end of the week, they knew that principle. I would ask them, what's wisdom? And they could tell me. Because they're like little parrots, they're little tape recorders. They just record everything. And so I said, if you can learn Lion King, you can learn wisdom. So I did that week after week. Again, they demanded time, so I gave it to them.
Absolutely. In terms of, going for this book, a child's guide to wisdom, what was the actual inspiration? Was it your children? One fine morning you woke up? What is it? I just want to understand your mind here.
Okay, so what happened here is I started teaching the principles. I had about 20 principles that I was teaching the children. Every day I was just going at it. And my wife looked at the whole process and she said, why don't you put it in a book? And I said, I hadn't thought about that. And she said, yeah, put it in a book. I said, okay. So I wrote a book with the 20 principles, and I thought that was it. And I sent it to the publisher, and the publisher said, no, you can't just do 20 principles in the book. You need to give me more. And so we went on ahead and we expanded it to 50 principles. And then I had the brilliant idea, however you cut it, money motivates. So I figure, people do all kinds of things for money. I said, well, if people do all kinds of things for money, why don't we pay the children to learn the principle? So instead of giving them an allowance, weekly allowance or whatever, they had to give me principles. They gave me principles, I gave them money. And so we wanted to establish a link between the money and wisdom, that wisdom pays big dividends. So we included a compensation system where if the child quote the principle from memory 21 times, we pay them, each time they quote it from memory, we pay them a little bit of money. And then when they did it 21 times, we figured they mastered it, and then we gave them a bonus. So we established a link between wisdom and money.
Absolutely. And in terms of, your book. So after this book got published, now that it is useful, how did it impact your children? Means, what is the wisdom they learn from it? How do you see they are utilizing it in their life now?
My objective was for them to embrace wisdom as a way of life. My objective was for them to live lives of principle. Well, my children are now 32. They're twin girls. They're 32. They look identical. I had uncles that were identical. They could be a pain. But my children were well behaved. When I would send them out with their friends, I would tell my children, I don't know what your friends' parents have taught them, but I have taught you wisdom. Therefore, you lead. You don't follow. And so when their friends would want to get into trouble, they never would, because they knew better. And so they call them goody two-shoes and this and that and the other. But my children always lived lives of principle. And so we use the principles to correct them and direct them. So the principles were always a part of their lives. And to this day, they have embraced wisdom as a way of life. They are readers and learners and appliers of wisdom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, in terms of this whole thing called wisdom or information, how is it that parents can balance this? Because school, they have to work, school things, they have to work. In schools, school work has to be done. Lot of information is there. Children nowadays use so much of social media, mobile phones and all. So how it can be difficult for parents also to make sure that there is not too much for the children. How is it that they can balance it? How did you balance at that point in time? Now, now we have got AI also, much more, speed of creation, content creation for everyone to consume.
Well, that's why you got to start from young. In the first 5 years, you have their attention. As a parent, you have their attention. After they get older and they get out there and they get exposed to all the vast amount of knowledge, you don't have as much of an opportunity. But when they are little, you've got their attention. So that's why I emphasize starting from the time they can speak. They're going to learn. So you get a chance to determine what they learn. And so what it did for us is it bonded us with our children. Because again, we were a captive audience. We had to spend time with them. And so these were good times and warm times. And it was just part of the conversation. When we would be driving around in the car, they'd be sitting in the back seat. I'd be drilling them. Well, what is wisdom? What is knowledge? What is understanding? What is transparency? And it was a game. So everything was a game. But as they grew, we could then point out the behavior. If they were acting in a way that was not consistent with wisdom, we would say, well, what is this principle? They would tell us what the principle is, and we said, now, are you acting that way? So it was just part of the upbringing. Some parents yell and scream and all that stuff. Well, we didn't have to do that. We just have to ask them what principle and then show them how to apply the principle. So they grew it. It became part of their normal upbringing.
Absolutely, Tony. So for schools now, how should they adopt this thing? Is it easy for them? Is it challenging for them? What role can they play in imparting wisdom to children in school?
Cool. Okay, so one of the things that I thought about is that this would be a good tool for preschool. This would be a good tool for kindergarten. In these environments, they are learning anyway. And so I thought, how about, one of the biggest fears of one of people's biggest fears is the fear of speaking in front of an audience. Okay. But if you have a preschool and you have a bunch of little kids, you're teaching them something. So what if the teacher said, okay, repeat after me. Wisdom is knowing what to do. And everybody says it. And back and forth. As part of their little curriculum. So it's not gonna dominate the class, but it will be a part of the daily routine. Take one principle a week and back and forth. Call and repeat. Wisdom is knowing what to do and doing it when you're supposed to do it and knowing what not to do and not doing it. The children are gonna learn. They learn rap. And they learn all the bad words that come out of rap. Nobody has to force that. So if whatever the teacher teaches these children, they will learn it. So one principle a week, call and repeat. By the end of the week, they'll know the principle. And then, so week after week, by the end of the year, not only will the children have learned whatever they needed to learn, but they're going to learn principles of wisdom too.
Absolutely. A lot of parents feel that their children should be smart, street smart. I don't know whether wisdom smart or not. So how should they look at it? Because they're thinking worries also that the children get good jobs when they grow up. They are market ready in that sense. That's the reality of life. Sometimes wisdom can clash with the understanding of the market too much. What is your assessment in terms of where the wisdom will remain a strength, or whether street smartness will have, wisdom will have to give way to street smartness?
Well, street smarts is really wisdom. It's just wisdom in another form, but it is wisdom. Because the bottom line is wisdom is knowing what to do and doing it when you're supposed to do it, and knowing what not to do and not doing it. That sounds like street smarts to me.
That's a smart answer indeed, Reverend Everton. I can tell you that. That's perfect. And if you look at it, both things, you will have, you can have the cake and eat it too. Both.
Absolutely. The thing about it is, at the end of the day, when a person goes for an interview, what are you looking for as an employer? I was a supervisor, I was a controller, and so I hired people. What was I looking for? I looked for, number one, knowledge of the job, but two, I looked for character traits, and that's what wisdom is. If people have these qualities built into their character, any employer would say, "I like what I see." It comes out in their spirit. It comes out, and so the knowledge would help you to get the job, but the character will allow you to keep the job.
Absolutely. Well explained, Tony. Now, in terms of the book, who is this book for? Is it for parents? Is it for educators? Is it for children? Can they read it themselves?
It is for parents. Now, the child has to get the book to read it and to learn, because each page has a principle, and then it's numbered from 1 to 21. So each time the child quotes a principle from memory, the parent will initial one of these numbers and pay the child some money. So it's an interactive book, but you got to start with the parent. If the parent makes it important, then the child will follow suit. But if the parent just buys the books and gives it to the child, nothing happens. It has to be intentional. That's where I run into the challenges with the book, because people want to just buy it and just give it to the child. Well, the child, they don't understand what's going on. But if the parent says, "Okay, I don't want you to just be intelligent, I want you to be wise, I want you to make good choices," then the parent will take the time to interact with the child so the child can learn. So the parent is the important part. The teacher is the important part. The principal is an important part. Because in a school, the principal and the teacher develop the culture. What if they have a culture of wisdom in the classroom? I'm not only going to teach you the curriculum, but part of our curriculum, we're going to teach you some wisdom. Wow. Imagine how the child will come out of there. Compared to another child in another school, that child will be way ahead.
Absolutely. And especially in today's age, when AI is, taking over everything, this wisdom will help you stay grounded.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you, Reverend Everton, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you. A lot of parents, educators would want to connect with you, learn more about your book, learn about your thoughts on several other things. What's the best way for them to do so?
They can go to my website, achildsguidetowisdom.net. achildsguidetowisdom.net. And they can buy the book. They can buy individuals or groups of books or whatever on my website.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.